Hi guys, Tom here. We are going to try really quickly to talk through the key elements of Xero. I'm not going to go into too much detail on each item purely because I've done separate videos on that, but as a general overview of what Xero looks like, why I think it's great and how I can navigate around it, this is a really good video for that. So let's get straight into it. Right, this is your dashboard. You can edit your dashboard. You can create different reports on here. You can see what the performance has been to date for invoices owed to you, bills you need to pay. I tend not to use the dashboard if I'm honest. As an accountant, I go through the trial balance, the balance sheet, and the profit and loss account. But for your business, the dashboard is really quite helpful. So have a watch of the other videos I've done on the dashboard, have a play around, Google it, get it tailored for you, find out what works for you. But what we're going to talk about is how the process I have for when I'm doing bookkeeping. And I would say 95% of the time, this process never changes for me. It hasn't for years. I'll tweak it here and there, but as a general rule, I'll log into Xero. I will check that my bank account. I will check that my bank account feed is working. So if it isn't, the reason why I check that first is because I can fix the bank connection, do some other work, and whilst I'm doing that other work, the bank transactions come in. If you do your creditors and your debtors, and then you come to reconcile the bank and it's not connected, you're kind of lost and you have to wait then. So I always check that first. Then what I do is I go through my bills to pay. So I will deal with all my draft invoices. I will make sure if there's anything that's a duplicate, I'll make sure everything's working okay. Then I go into my sales invoices and I make sure that all my invoices have been raised correctly. I make sure that I haven't got any draft invoices, or if I do have draft invoices, why haven't they gone out yet? And then I just have a quick look for awaiting payment. This isn't to make sure that I start chasing people now. It's more of just I'm building that refreshment in my mind of what happened the week before when I last did my bookkeeping. What do I need to keep an eye on? What should I be looking out for? So, for example, here, this big invoice here, I want to make sure that goes through the bank because that's a big one. I want to make sure I get paid for that. And then what I would do, so I've done check my bank feed, done creditors, done debtors, and then would reconcile my bank transactions, clear them all down. I always think it's a good idea every week to try and have this matching. And then what I do is I just quickly log into my online banking, make sure that Xero is correct, because although I haven't seen any errors in the last 12 months, a few years ago, it used to be like once every year, you would see maybe a couple of transactions missed. Xero is incredibly reliable. I've seen other software providers where they're not quite as reliable with this, but always a good habit just to check. It takes you 5 seconds to log onto your online banking. So I'd do that. And then what I would do is I would just go through my weekly report. So I've done my inputs, I've done my bank recs, and now I'm just checking that everything looks okay by going through my age payable summary, my age receivable summary, my balance sheet, and my profit and loss. And then you can also find other reports in here. You can do your journals. You can do everything through this accounting section. So that tends to be my weekly sort of basic bookkeeping checks. And then at that point, because with all the will in the world, as directors of companies and as business owners, we do occasionally forget the business card and we pay for things personally. So I always think when you're working and something is fresh in your mind because it happened a few days ago, deal with it then. If you wait until the end of the year for the accountant to say to you, right, what expenses did you pay personally in the year? I guarantee you'll forget. I guarantee you will miss out on things. So do it regularly. Get it into your software. So what I do is I go through my personal bank transactions once a week just to make sure I haven't accidentally paid for something personally. Classic one is the other day I had to pay for parking. I used the Ringo app. I paid through it on my personal phone, personal bank account. So I know if I hadn't dealt with it then, I'd forgotten about that in 6 months' time. And I'd have lost out on the parking fees just because I'd forgotten my business bank card. And then I do a quick health check. So I think I've done everything at that point. I'll do a health check. How does my cash flow look for the next week? How does it look for the next month? Now, overall, I would say for a lot of businesses, even ones that are turning over millions, you can generally do a lot of the health check stuff in 10 minutes. Stuff is just going to be obvious to you. But this is a really good way of going through it. So that was the quick 5-minute breakdown of the process of how I do my bookkeeping. Let's look into things into a bit more detail now. So let's get into bills to pay. So these are your supplier invoices. These are your receipts, your expenses incurred. So if you are uploading things directly into Xero from your computer, the quick way of doing it is through new bill. But I would always suggest that if you've got paper receipts where you're out and about and you buy something, so you get your fuel receipts or you get your little, your your shopping stuff that you've bought out and about, and they give you a receipt, use the phone app to scan it in rather than doing it on your computer scanner, just because scanners tend to be a bit slower. And then when you're receiving emails with your invoices from your suppliers, do the auto forward or do the forward for your email. Now, to get that unique email address, you go to automate bill and you just copy that in and you forward it across. Really is easy to do. But we're going to create a little invoice here. So we go to new bill. So this is going to be from Carlando, and we're going to do this. I was a bit slow in getting this uploaded. So, 31st of March. So we're going to call that the 31st of March. Now, what you've got here is items and descriptions. So what you've got here is shortcuts. So if I create a new item, I can say that every time I buy or sell that item, it just as a shortcut, really, you're just doing a drop down. So I bought from Carlando some golf balls, and you can see here it automatically uploads it all, and it tells me how the VAT is treated. I also bought a pack of 9, so 44.40. Now, if I want to upload a copy of the receipt, I'll click on here, upload files, and then I could go into my computer system, and then I would find out where the files were saved and upload it. And I just want to make sure that the numbers match. So if I put this in, and it's £45, and I try and approve, it won't let me go any further because there's clearly an error. So always put in the total before you hit approve. Just double check the receipt matches and then enter it and hit approve. Now, the temptation is there to say when you paid it. I would always suggest you do not do this. All right. Do it through the bank reconciliations. Even if you've paid it in cash, do not cut the corner by entering it in here. And the reason for that is that if you enter it in here and then further down the line you've realised you've made an error, or let's say, for example, I've included VAT here at 20%, but actually I've made an error and it should have been zero rated. If I put the payment through, I can't change the VAT amount without removing the payment. So I create work for myself by doing it because I'd have to enter the payment again. If I do it through a bank reconciliation and watch my cash import video for that, it doesn't delete the bank line. It doesn't delete the cash line. So you can always match it later on. And it just means you keep that audit trail. And it's really good. So this is entered the bill, nice and easy. If I go back into bills to pay, you should see that it's now awaiting payment. So if I go Carlando, there it is there. And this is a really handy tool, Xero. It's fairly self-explanatory, really. When you get in here, first thing you do is make sure your drafts are all cleared, make sure your awaiting payments look okay, make sure you've uploaded everything, all the receipts are done, all the invoices are done. So that's great. And then I would say, let's move on to our sales invoices. So business and invoices. So here you can see all the invoices that I have generated through my company. You can see the ones awaiting payment, and just note as well, we haven't done the bank rec yet, so we'll come back to this later. Now, I always go through my draft invoices first. Why haven't I sent these drafts? What do I need to do to get them out the door? Awaiting approval. So, for businesses where you've got other people generating invoices and you have a final reviewer, that's what this function is for. But most clients I know don't use that. Awaiting payment. I always have a look at this before I do the bank rec, just because I want to make sure I keep an eye out for the big ones. So it's just about refreshing myself really from the previous week. Then we've got our paid invoices here, and then we've got repeating sales invoices. So this is really, really handy if you are always supplying the same service to a customer over a regular period. So let's say you're subletting part of your building, you would set up a repeating invoice. If you are always, like I do, I provide my accountancy services on a monthly subscription, I create a repeating invoice. So I don't have to physically go in and generate the invoices every single month. And it is really, really straightforward. Just click on new repeating invoice, input all the information, and then when you hit save, it'll ask you which email address to go to. If you've already got the contact set up, it's a doddle, really is a doddle. Now, if you go into all, this is when you're creating your normal invoices. And again, it's just like entering bills to pay. You just input the information. You can see here, I haven't set it up on the demo yet, but you can create so that you've got your logo, your postal address, everything in there. Really, really good bit of kit. And again, you can use the products here. So let's say those white balls that I bought earlier from Carlando, I've marked them up. This is what it shows. You can show that the price is always consistent and you're using it there day in, day out. So for my fishing clients, we would just set up, value for landings as the item, or we could set it up to break it down by the fish and the weight category. Really, really good bit of kit. And I would always suggest that if you've got a new contact and you don't have them yet, so let's say have I created Jensen button yet? No. So you can just create it like that, and it doesn't really have a huge amount of information. So what I tend to do is I will click on that with my left mouse button and right click to open link a new tab. Because I know that I'm going to work with Jensen for a long period of time, I would fill out the contact information in full first, and then just refresh this, make it blank again. And then I would create Jensen as the contact in there properly and edit it properly. So it's just, you do the system in the right way, it saves you a lot of time down the road. So that was how you go through invoices. That's how you deal with your sales. And also, quick little tip here, invoice reminders. Bloody brilliant this is. So if you want to email customers when an invoice is due, it does it automatically for you. Just make sure you spend the time getting the email right. And if, for example, you aren't consistent with your bookkeeping, this can bite you. And what I mean by that is, if you've got your auto reminders done and it's for 7, 14 and 21 days, if you aren't staying on top of your bookkeeping regularly, your customers will get reminded because you haven't marked an invoice as paid if they have paid it. So that can create a lot of friction. So please be careful. Stay on top of your bookkeeping if you are going to use this. I would say if you are using this feature, you need to be updating your bookkeeping daily just for the sales income and reconciling through the bank. And that brings me on to reconciling through the bank. So we go to accounting and bank accounts. Here you can see I've got 2 bank accounts set up. When it's blue like this, it means that the bank feed is working and you can reconcile some transactions. So uh, good habit rabbit would always say, don't cut corners, take your time, don't rush through it. You can create a hell of a lot of work for yourself if you rush. So AI is great for a lot of things, but it is just like us, it makes mistakes. It's not perfect. It's making assumptions on what we've told it to do. And if we've told it to do things wrong in the past, it will continue doing it wrong. So here you can see it's correctly identified that this invoice was paid because the customers kindly entered the invoice number. So to match it, I just hit OK, nice and easy. Now, if, for example, this payment was wrong and I didn't want to use this match, I could just hit create and it will go back to me creating it normally. A discussion point is when I don't want to I don't want to process it through the bank reconciliation yet. I want to leave it there, but for someone else maybe to pick it up. That's really handy if you are missing invoices and you need to go back to someone else. So let's say you've got someone that works for you. You usually like husband and wife. Wife is great at keeping the bookkeeping and doing the receipts and everything. Husband is useless at bookkeeping, useless at receipts. So every week they have to find out what invoices are missing. Using the discussion thing is really handy for that. But as a general rule, I would say don't leave things in discuss for more than a week. If after a week you still haven't found that receipt or invoice, go into create, enter the who, what, and why, and in what put suspense, and then do the why as to why you haven't been able to process it properly. Missing a receipt or whatever, and then once a month I clear suspense. I make sure it's all cleared, and the reason for that is that I want my bank account reconciled every single time I go in to use it, and really I wouldn't want it a week going by where it wasn't reconciled because I want to make sure it's all correct. So go through here. I've done videos on how to set up bank rules, what the different tabs all mean. Have a watch of that. Bank rules are fantastic for cutting corners. When you've got a recurring expense coming out of your bank, let's say, for example, I bank with NatWest and once a month they do me a bank charge. I can set it up so every time NatWest charge me through the bank and it comes in through Xero, Xero recognizes that and it tries to put it to bank fees. So you can really cut corners on that without having to type everything in really, really regularly. Yeah, I've done videos on that. Again, watch below. So let's assume I've reconciled my bank. What I would be doing as a general check once a week is just log into online banking on my phone and check that the statement balance matches what is actually going through the bank. We're in sort of a golden era with bookkeeping at the moment where everything is working really, really well. But there was a period where bank feeds were inconsistent and they made errors. So make sure you stay on top of that. Cash reconciliation, I'm not really going to go into that too much detail. I've done another video on that. But now we're talking about let's review our age payables and our age receivables. So I always do it through the accounting tab, and I right click to open a new tab. And it's just because I like to have these tabs open so that I make sure I can flick through them easily and I'm not waiting for things to load. So my age payable summary, this summarizes all of the bills to pay that I owe at a specific time, at a specific date. So you can see here I've got some age payables and I've got some expense claims that are still outstanding. I haven't paid them. And you can see here's the Carlando invoice I raised earlier. If I change it, you notice that the timing difference changes. So if I change that to 31st of March, at the 31st of March, that was a current supplier bill to pay. So it was in terms. But if I go today, you'll see that it is outside of terms. Now, this is a good indicator of problems potentially. So if I've got debt building up and I'm not paying my suppliers on time, I can identify early. So as a general rule, most people try to stay within their 30-day terms. Sometimes they go over to 60, let's say. But if I'm not staying on top of the 60, then yeah, alarm bells are going to ring unless I've got pre-agreed payment terms. And also, you can keep an eye on things here. So for example, Tom Bickle here, that's me, should that be in there as an age payable? If it's, I've got expense claims down here, do I need to correct something? Xero, that's a monthly subscription. So is it that the bill's being created, but when I'm doing the bank reconciliation, I've accidentally done a create payment, and then I've created an issue where I've got double accounting. So just keep an eye on it. You use a bit of common sense. Does this look correct? Is what I would say. My light is now flickering. There we go. So yeah, does this all look right? Does it make sense? Have I paid things that aren't showing as cleared on here? And it's the same for age receivables. I keep an eye on it. Does this look right? Right, City Limousines, 2 months overdue. Do I want to continue working with them, or do I need to increase the pressure on getting them to pay? So just keep an eye on it. Make sure it's all going right. So yeah, those are simple reports that you can find. You can find other reports by going to accounting and reports, and Xero has loads. You can do custom reports as well. So I've created management accounts templates in there that are fantastic. They're really helpful. You can do your cash summary, your business performance. You've got some nice analytics stuff here. You've got your financial statements, so balance sheet, profit and loss account, statement of cash flows. So that's quite a nice one to look at. It shows you how your cash has been spent or received through a month. So you can see here, I've got receipt from customers, payment to suppliers. I've got some other cash items. So my net cash movement in the period is an increase of 2,000. So it's really handy to have a look at these things. It doesn't take you long to just build a picture of how your performance is, your business is performing. Profit and loss account. This report's brilliant. You can really, really use it for lots of things. So I can do like a date range for the year, but if I want to do this month, I'm going to say, okay, that's helpful. But we always like to compare, so I can compare it to 4 months, and then you can start to see trends. This was a good month. That was a really, really good month. Why did I make losses in that month? Right, subscriptions. Okay, maybe I need to talk to my accountant. Do I need to do a prepayment there? Because if this subscription has been raised as a bill, but I don't have to pay it for in one go, I can spread it over 12 months. We want to recognize the cost over 12 months. So is it distorting my profit figure for March 25? And that's where you'd speak to your accountant and say, can you help me up with a recurring journal? And then statement of cash flows. Oh, we've been through that. Sorry. So balance sheet. You imagine your balance sheet is a snapshot in time as to the financial position of the business. So we've got our fixed assets here. So these are the assets that the company controls that generates the income. And then you've got the current assets. So these are assets that can quickly be converted into cash. Generally, we say quickly is 12 months. And then your amounts falling due within 1 year. So we've got net current liabilities of 4,000. So technically insolvent at this point. So we need to really consider, as directors, are we able to meet our debts as they fall due? Because if we can't, and we don't think we can, we need to talk to an insolvency practitioner what we do about moving forward. But then if I compare it to the last 2 years, I can see not a lot has changed because this is the demo company, but you can see that we've started to buy assets. We've got some cash in the bank. We've got some liabilities, got this weird historical adjustment. Why is that in there? So yeah, really good report to look through. And that's all part of your health check, really. Just go through things. It doesn't take you long to just spend 5 minutes reviewing the health of the business. Is it looking good? Are things going well? Are we happy that the business is moving in the right direction? Do we have any alarm bells? Do we have any suppliers that we need to talk to? Do we have any customers that aren't paying us? And just really keep an eye on it. So that's a good run through on the main things I do for bookkeeping. A few other things that you might want to look at are your advanced settings. So in here, you've got your financial settings. This is where you can change your year end. Find and recode, amazing bit of kit, find and recode. So I'll do another video on that, but find and recode, you could add conditions and correct loads of transactions all in one go. So if I do sales, I can change all of these codes in one go just by doing the find and recode. That's brilliant when you've made errors, because we all make them. What else is in here? History and notes. So if you want to review what work people have done on here, you can do that. History and notes. So if I have a look today, it probably won't show me much because it's the demo company, but it would show me like I've done adjustments today. Contacts. There you go. There's all the information that shows you what I've done. And you can also select who's done what. So I always go through all contacts. I don't bother separating out suppliers and customers. Just do one contact. If it's a supplier and a customer, just do it as one contact. It makes life a lot easier. A couple of other shortcuts are, you can use this plus button to create some shortcuts, but I tend not to use that really. I go through the formal process of going places. Products and services, we talked about that in sales, and I've done a separate video on it, but you can go through here. It's really quite straightforward when it loads. You can create new items, you can import them, you can export them. There's guide for everything really with Xero. It's a very, very good bit of kit. And then I always rely on the trial balance. So if I see here, I don't have trial balance saved. If I search for it here, actually, if I do Control F search and then tick the star, now when I go to reports, it appears. So the trial balance is what every accountant gets excited about. So you can see here, nice double entry bookkeeping, it all matches, and we've got the comparative there. So again, I would be looking at alarm signs. So I've got sales here, but I've got a debit balance of VAT, which means that the company is due a refund. Is that correct? Is that the type of business that should be getting a refund? I've got negative retained earnings. They've got a historical adjustment. That's always a massive red flag. I've got unpaid expenses. I can't see any depreciation going through here. So the trial balance is a really good bit of kit in that you can just get a nice overview very, very quickly. And as you get experience with bookkeeping and experience through using Xero, you will be finding it much easier to stay on top of these things. So I've tried to whiz through this. I'm really sorry it's so fast. There is so many amazing features with Xero. You can do some great reporting. Find and recode is a fantastic bit of kit. I can log in at any time and help you over the phone or through a screen share. It's a really, I just love Xero. It's a fantastic, fantastic piece of software and a great investment for your business. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below. If there's a specific thing you want to know about Xero, how does this work? How does that work? Again, just ask me, because I tend to do videos about loads of different subjects that never get published online because I do them for specific clients. But sometimes I will publish a video that can be used by anybody. So that's really good. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. Apologies for the long-winded, rushed conversation. And I will see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.